Spider-Man is turning 60 years old in August of this year. Today I will be discussing Peter Parker's story and the origin of Spider-Man, the many villains that he has battled, and the cinematic history of Spider-Man. First, I will discuss the origin story and life story of Spider-Man and Peter Parker. Peter Parker is a high school student turned superhero. Marvel Encyclopedia explains that Spider-Man was born after Peter Parker went to a science exhibition by himself where he was bitten by a common house spider that had been exposed to a massive dose of radiation. Before Parker used his powers for fighting crime, he used them for show business. He designed a suit to control his newfound powers and to conceal his identity, eventually leading to the suit we know now. Peter Parker used the stage name The Amazing Spider-Man. The first appearance of Spider-Man in a comic book was in August of 1962 in a comic book called Amazing Fantasy No. 15. The true reason that Parker decided to use his powers for good is that he believes he caused his Uncle Ben's death. After a performance as the Amazing Spider-Man, Parker was asked to stop a man running from the security guard, and he did not stop the burglar. A few nights later, the same burglar shot and killed Uncle Ben. The Marvel Encyclopedia explains that Peter's parents were killed in a plane crash while he was still a child, and he was raised by his Uncle Ben and Aunt May. Peter saw his uncle as his best friend, and they spent a lot of time together. It was clear that Ben was the best father figure for Peter. Peter Parker did amazing in school and always received exceptional grades in high school, which unfortunately led to him getting bullied. According to Marvel Encyclopedia, the girls saw him as too quiet, and the boys saw him as a wimp. Though he wasn't very popular in high school, he gained a bit of popularity in college. He eventually dated Gwen Stacy, the Black Cat, and Mary Jane Watson. Peter and Mary Jane Watson eventually got married and had a daughter together named May Parker. I have just explained Peter's origin story and the origin story of Spider-Man. Next, I will tell you about the many villains that Spider-Man has faced. According to Marvel.com, many of Spider-Man's enemies present as normal human beings with extraordinary ambition who adopted themes and gimmicks to elevate themselves above the simple man on the street. Norman Osborn, better known as Green Goblin, fought the Web-Slinger early on in his career. Marvel.com states that the clashes between Spider-Man and Green Goblin are some of the most difficult of the wall crawler's career, including replacing May Parker with an actress, attempting to mold Parker into his heir, framing Parker for murder, a brief affair with Gwen Stacy, becoming the top cop of American law enforcement, and his rebranding as the Goblin King. The Green Goblin was also the villain who caused Gwen Stacy's death. Norman's son, Harry, eventually took over the Green Goblin legacy. The next villain is Dr. Otto Octavius. Octavius became Dr. Octopus after an accident merged a set of mechanical robotic limbs to the nuclear scientist's body and accentuated his antisocial personality. The first villain that Spider-Man faced was the Chameleon, who used his mastery of disguise to make Spider-Man question everyone around him. Venom is one of the more well-known villains that Spidey has faced. Venom is a product of an alien parasite coming to Earth and attaching itself to Spider-Man. The symbiote was eventually fought off by Spider-Man, but Venom started splitting itself, which eventually led to Carnage being created. And Carnage is one of the most vicious villains that Spider-Man has ever faced. Some of the other villains that Spider-Man has battled are Electro, Rhino, Kingpin, the Lizard, Vulture, Scorpion, Sandman, and the Black Cat. While Spider-Man seems to have a lot of enemies, he also has quite a few allies. Some include his family, Uncle Ben and Aunt May, his significant others, Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy. His most notable friends or allies are Captain America, the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, Eugene the Flash Thompson, and Betty Brand Leeds. Marvel.com mentions that one of his closest friends is Johnny Storm, or the Human Torch from the Fantastic Four. I have just explained the many villains that Spider-Man has battled, and also the friends that stay by his side. Finally, I will be discussing the cinematic history of Spider-Man. The first time we see Spidey on the big screen is in 2002 when Sony released Spider-Man. According to Britannica.com, the critics adored the film, and it eventually earned more than $800 million worldwide. Sony then released Spider-Man 2 in 2004 and Spider-Man 3 in 2007. These three films feature the same love interest as Mary Jane Watson and has no connection to the Avengers. The next Spider-Man movies to hit the big screen are The Amazing Spider-Man 1 in 2012 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 a couple years later in 2014. These two films feature the same love interest as Gwen Stacy, and we see a different Spider-Man. The suit is also noticeably different with a new spider symbol in the middle. According to Britannica.com, Spider-Man made his first Marvel Cinematic appearance in 2016. The film Captain America Civil War was released and featured a new Spider-Man. The new Spidey is noticeably younger, and you get to see a lot more of the high school part of Spider-Man's life. This is also the first time that the Avengers are introduced in the Spider-Man storyline cinematically. In 2017, Disney released Spider-Man Homecoming, and we see the same Spidey from Captain America Civil War, but we also see a new love interest, MJ, and a younger Aunt May. We also see Parker form a relationship with Tony Stark, also known as Iron Man. In 2018, Disney put out Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. The animated film explores the multiverse and introduces many versions of Spider-Man and Spider-Woman. Even though the film explores the multiverse and a link could be possible, GoodHousekeeping.com claims that it does not link up with any other movies. In 2018 and 2019, Disney released Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, and Spider-Man Far From Home. In Infinity War and Endgame, we see a new villain, Thanos, and Spider-Man gets snapped from existence for 5 years but returns again in Avengers Endgame. Far From Home takes place shortly after Avengers Endgame. The most recent Spider-Man movie to be released was in 2021, Spider-Man No Way Home, and in this film, it explores the multiverse and brings the two aforementioned Spider-Man together with the newer Spider-Man. We get to see the version of Parker and MJ's relationship where MJ forgets Peter existed. The future for Spidey cinematically seems very up in the air. In an interview in the New York Times with Kevin Feige and Amy Pascal, the producers, they discuss the future for the beloved character. Feige explains that they are actively beginning to develop where the story leads next. I have discussed the cinematic history of Spider-Man. To wrap up, I've just informed you on the origin story of Spider-Man and Peter Parker's story, the villains that Spider-Man has faced, and the cinematic history of Spider-Man. Over the past 60 years, Spider-Man has become a household name, and he has continued to keep that popularity.